guys, Hengist here from House of Hengist Comics, and a big welcome back to the channel, Beansters. Today, Sandblitz Somaliland, and yes, it's day one, the first day of this campaign. And let's look at our sit rep or situation report. And effectively, we've got a lot going on in this first phase. The first actual actions are at Knobley Hill, Observation Hill and Punjab Bridge, and these were the main actions that occurred in the turn. We're using our Achtung Panzer rules, which are being built by the community, and importantly our battle decks, which are used for each and every battle. But first, let's now take you to the front line at Tug Argan, and we'll get an overview of really what's going on in this narrow corridor where all this infantry fighting is taking place in very rugged and rough terrain. But first, let's go to Research Corner and see what we've managed to dig out this week. Wargaming does require a lot of research, and this one from tanksencyclopedia.com was really helpful as well for us. We've consulted a number of resources, but it's great to get information which helps you build those war games really well and gets them close. Another good reference is Rex Tarr's Mussolini Soldiers, and one for our military subscribers, the Sandhurst Kriegspiel. But first, let's get us straight into the after action reports, and we're going to kick off with our first action at Knobley Hill. Here we have a British company, which is actually Commonwealth Indian Punjabis. They have 3 platoons, basically 2 mortars and a machine gun platoon, and they are defending this rise and this hill. And one of the things, a feature in it, is what I call the draw. And this draw is really quite critical. Here's the top of the hill. You can see the mortar pits there, which is quite nice, and a first aid station built by the commander, which was a really nice touch as well. You'll also see everything sandbagged and dug in, so that's quite good. And here we have this draw. And as you can see, the 3rd platoon are not isolated as such, but really quite alone, protecting that position, and we'll see a lot in this battle. So here is effectively that mortar pit, and the battles start when the enemy has artillery with a preliminary bombardment, and this has a 6-inch strike radius. They're only 65mm guns, but boy, that explosion and those preliminary rounds came in heavy, and effectively they managed to destroy a mortar team. Now that's not good, because heavy weapons can't be replaced, so this is erosionary loss already. And then we see effectively the Dubats effectively marching up this draw. In fact, a whole company was to charge down this draw and try and take out 3rd platoon. Effectively, as they were moving up, they were being under a lot of small arms fire. But then we get this, and this was a real surprise, which were Blenheims, which came in very low, machine gunning and dropping bombs. And as those bombs hit, they caused a lot of consternation with the colonial troops. Here at the end of the draw, the Punjabis look on, but the incredible dice, effectively we see the Somali troops moving forward really aggressively, and artillery is constantly ranging in this from off-table artillery support allocated for this battle. And as the attacks continue, it's starting to look a bit precious really. Here there's a central attack as well by the 2nd company, and that's got 3 platoons. But it's here, this main attack, 3 platoons again against 1 single platoon interspersed with machine guns. And they're opening fire and pushing back and driving this Scari forward. But the Dumbat, they get as far as the wire, which surprised them, when another flight of bombers came in and again started unleading its payload. And effectively, a lot of the colonial troops who've never seen aircraft began to take casualties and start to take fright. But here on the draw, there was massive fighting, and it was really knicker-gripping stuff. And effectively, the Punjabis held off the first attacks. That re-roll motivation to counterattack, it was certainly a benefit. And it looked as though the Italians were going to break. But then suddenly, the Indians elected to charge and basically fix bayonets and came at them. And the result was that both platoons broke, the Indians especially. And what we were left with is under Domino, 2 other platoons broke. But the 1st platoon got through, much to the delight of the battalion commander. But in the centre, they had to withdraw. So we had a really interesting first game with 1 platoon effectively getting round Knobley Hill. So that poses interesting challenges. Let's now look at the second battle, which was Observation Hill. And here we see the deployment. I can't show you all of the dispositions here, but again we have the D for dummy positions, and these come into play as well. Now what's critical about this location is this is the main road, and going over the wadi is a bridge as well, but no one really went near that bridge. And effectively what we see is again a very good deployment, set out, well executed deployment, interlocking fire with a really good sort of defensive matrix, so to speak. Everything's dug in, and once more it's not a good assault really for the Italians over open ground with barbed wire and a heavy machine gun strong point in the centre, which was to cause a lot of casualties. Again, coming out of the wadi, the Italians advance with everything, just as a preliminary bombardment comes in, but this time it's ineffective, and so the Italians, and there's hordes of them, pouring forward into this really murderous killing zone. And the Indians on this ridge were really excellent. They didn't lose their cool. They basically opened fire even when pressurized with a flank attack. But the British did have artillery support, and they made that count, and it was causing lots and lots of problems. And in the front, as the Italians bold and bravely moved forward, especially those Dombats or Dubats or whatever they're called, they got shot to pieces. Once more, eventually the Italians decided they couldn't take their losses. They had a 30% loss ratio sort of situation where they decided they would pull back if they got those, and so they fell back. And effectively it was not an excellent attack really on their part, but driven in and driven off. Ultimately, I think this position, as the battle map indicated, needs heavier sort of ordnance against it. Finally, we had Punjab Ridge, and this is perhaps one of the most exciting games I've seen and participated in for a long time. It was unbelievable dice from the outset, and as you can see, this is a commanding position, and the terrain once again is very open. Once more we had the Italians in a typical company with 6 platoons, machine guns, some scouts, and that's it. But they had off-table artillery against the standard King's African rifle formation, and effectively the Italians were to attack in a somewhat haphazard manner at first, because the orders were very unclear, and so they pushed forwards. And what was interesting is the commander on the ground decided to try and hook ground and flank, and this is where he sends the entire company outside of machine gun range and sort of bolts round onto the flank while he pushes up the centre. And you can see now how quickly and how fast the Askari are moving forward. They've used a combination of doubling and then cautious movement. They've been using artillery, which is ranging in effectively on 2nd and 1st platoons, and these are pinned and remaining pinned, and this is helping them get up that field. And they're shooting as well, and they're just in a position to sort of jump off. You can also see here that in the bastion or the dummy position, the scouts have moved in and they're using it as a base of fire onto the hill as well, so that's causing problem. And you can see in this photograph how close the Askari are effectively to the King's African rifles. A jam is played on the heavy machine gun, and we also see a sandbag roll made to save a precious light machine gun base. We then get the first of the Askari assaults, which comes in bravely led. It isn't stopped by fire, and it continues to press forward with vigour. They hit on 4+ basically as a result of native knives, but they are soon repelled by the King's African rifles, who are counter-attacking with their 1IC. It's been a really excellent fight, but casualties are suffering, and 3rd platoon sit basically looking down at the Dumbats, which are advancing rapidly towards them. From the hill, the heavy machine guns are firing, but look at the casualties effectively on 2nd platoon in that centre. They are just at the verge of breaking, and this has been through just direct fire and one assault. It's looking very tenuous for the King's African rifles. The 2IC is looking on dumbfounded as the enemy just keeps coming forward. It seems to unpin. It can't be stopped. It's got full vigour with it, And it's really quite surprising that they've got this far and this aggressively. They are taking casualties, but nothing's breaking. And it's very unlucky rolls really from the King's African Rifles, and fantastic rolls from these Italians, who now launch into a second assault and effectively drive in the first platoon. And the mortars are now under threat in that pit. And as the Askari move forward, it's looking very precarious. First platoon, as I said, are also breaking from rifle fire, and effectively only the 2IC is left on the field, and he's directed the mortars to the rear as the Askari push forwards. But then they decide that they are going to effectively come to a halt, and the reason for that is that orders are received that this is a probe. Just as both of the King's African Rifles break, leaving effectively the hill vacated, the King's African Rifles now leave with the machine guns and first platoon, and effectively the Askari hold the base of the hill. This was a fantastic game, full of all sorts of luck and fortune for Italy, and it was a superb pinning action. Italian headquarters, it's fantastic. They start to get the reports in, they're delighted, and in fact there's medals all around, lashings of Chianti and pizza by all accounts. Meanwhile at British headquarters, or Commonwealth headquarters I should say, we've got concerns over the local cricket pitch. But as we will see, we haven't seen the Scots in action yet. All I can say is it's been a remarkable 3 games, and our 2 colonels have been reflecting on what's happened, and I must say have been brilliant and really informative, and come up with this new method of reporting which we've been looking at to make the reports between battalion and brigade that much easier. Fantastic. And also in production, I'm still producing stuff for these games and these sets, and as you can see, we've got the Fiat 611 or auto blinder. We've also got the 3.7 howitzer battery, the only battery the British have, and we've got some local Somali scouts. So those are done. In the spotlight today as well, I'd like to recommend Battlefield 3D and Phil. I've had a lovely conversation with him. He's prepared to be most helpful. So if you've got anything you're interested in, let us know. Also, let's never forget the soldiers' sacrifice, and stay tuned and stay safe for the next episode. So it's to be continued, guys. Best wishes. Do stop by, subscribe, and bye for now.